Hello jet ski fans, and welcome to part 2 of the V8 jet ski exhaust manifold build. If you haven't seen part 1, make sure to go check that out, and if you haven't been following the build series on the Jet Ski Brothers channel, make sure to go check that out and get up to speed. At the end of the last video, I finished making the flanges, and I told you guys that I was about to make the primary runners and the log itself. I've been doing a whole lot of cutting of material, and there's a lot of exciting stuff to show you guys, so let's get right into it. Where we left off on this project, I had finished up the flanges and I had told you guys that we needed to figure out the primary runners as well as the log for the manifold itself. And so that's what I'm going to do now. Before I can figure out the length and the angles of the primary runners, I need to figure out the exact location of the log itself with the water jacket. And so the first thing I'm going to do is figure out the exact distance that I have to work with. The easiest way to figure out the distance between the two mounting plates that Josh has on his engine is to measure across the top of the block. And that is because the LS has machined surfaces on each side of the block, so that should be very consistent between my engine and his engine. I'm going to measure that now, and he will probably let me know what his is. It looks like I have 20 7/16.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
I've got some of the material cut out, as you can see. I still have to cut out some of the material for the inside part of the manifold. I have the 3-inch pieces, which are going to be the tops and bottoms of the water jacket, and I have the 4-inch pieces, which are going to be the sides of the water jacket. In order to calculate the exact height of the exhaust inside of the water jacket, I need to scribe off a line at 250 thousandths, and that is because the water jacket is going to be exactly a 1/4 inch all the way around the outside of the exhaust. I know the camera can't pick that up very well. Probably. In order to calculate the length of the exhaust inside of the water jacket, the process is a little bit different because I am going to be capping off the water jacket on the inside like this. And so I need to calculate for the thickness of the material that I'm using. So now that I've factored in the thickness of the material that I'm going to be using on the ends, and I've also factored in the water jacket, I can now scribe a line across the end, and that will tell me that the inside exhaust piece is going to go from this scribed line all the way down to this scribed line. I bet you guys thought that I was going to keep this nice and simple. This was going to be welded together in a box section and all would be well and good. Well, I'm not going to make it too complicated, but I am going to add an angle to the bottom plate so that we have a little bit more consistent exhaust pressure from the outside outlets or outside exhaust ports to the inside exhaust ports. The outlet for the exhaust manifold is going to be dead center of the exhaust ports, and so hopefully by adding a little bit of a taper on the bottom plate, that will keep the pressures a little bit more consistent from the outside exhaust ports to the inside exhaust port. The width of the exhaust manifold inside of the log is 1.66 inches, and so what I'm going to do is make it so that the height of the exhaust inside of the log at the outer edge is 1 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to taper down or angle down to the exhaust outlet. All right, now what I need to do is figure out the width of the exhaust outlet and then figure out the center of where the ports actually are. The center of this piece of material isn't exactly where the center of the ports are, so I've got to do a little bit of measuring and figure that out. Our material is going to go from here down to here.
Take my eyes open to force reality. Why can't you just let me eat my way?
Now that I have the angles cut on the bottom of the water jackets, I can now use that as a reference to cut the pieces or the plates that are actually going to cover the bottom. And I'm going to do that just by scribing a line because that's a much more accurate way of doing it.
Sometimes I can't tell if my body belongs to me. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
These water jacket end caps are going to sit inboard like this. And because of that, I need to subtract the thickness of the side walls. So I've already measured out 2 of these pieces. It is about 379.379. Just lock the caliper in place. And I can mark this off here. So the next thing I'm going to do is take the 2 top plates for the water box, and I'm going to cut out the holes big enough so that the primary pipe can fit through this. And then I'm going to use that to figure out what angles and lengths I need to make all of my pipe. All right, class, pay attention because this is going to be quick. I measured the width of the exhaust port and then divided that by 2. I used a square to find the outside of the exhaust port off of the top of the head. I then measured in from that line and found the center of the exhaust port using the previously mentioned measurement. I then measured from the center of the port to the outside of the cylinder head and then used that measurement to transfer onto this plate. After finding the center of the plate, which is 1.5 inches, I marked out the center of the previously mentioned hole placement, and then I used an already existing exhaust flange to mark out all of the holes on the plate. I then used the outside measurement of the markings to find the centers. I now have all of the centers marked off on here. And I am using a pointer to make sure that my mill is on center. As you can see, it is clearly not right now. I am then going to use my boring head to bore out the holes in the water jacket so that they are the exact dimensions of the pipe that I am going to be putting through here.
I'm just calling to say I...
We're finally to a point in this project where I can show you guys how little room I really have to work with. And I'm going to do that by basically showing you this little piece that I made to represent the exhaust runner, or what could be an exhaust runner if we had enough room. So I've made 5 pie cuts in this piece of cardboard that is the same outer diameter as the pipe that we're using. And I place it in here, and you can see it would go down to where the exhaust, or where the water box thingy would be. The problem is, if you look at it from the side, from this camera angle, it actually looks like we have room. It looks like we have about an inch of clearance, but the truth is revealed when we look at it from this angle. So when the back piece of cardboard disappears, that means that we're aligned with the hull. Let's see, it's right about there. I need a stand for this. And you can see the exhaust is actually sticking out. So Josh would have to cut away at the hull if we were to make that fit. To try to explain to you guys how much work really went into this project, I thought I would show you some of the templates that I made. Here are 5 of them that I actually finished. There were several more that I stopped making along the way because it was quite obvious that they just weren't going to work. And here are some of the offcuts from the aluminum that I cut up. And now that the people who don't pay attention are distracted, that was just a trick so that I could tell you guys a secret. Let's go outside. Okay, let's sneak away so that they can't hear us. All right. I think we're far enough away. Okay. Okay, this is serious, right? I've been teasing you guys for quite a while about what color I'm going to make my X2. I talked about fancy paint schemes and hinted at a few other things. If you pay very close attention at the end of this video, there is a bit of voiceover. And in that voiceover, if you watch the video clips, you will find out what finish I'm going to use on my X2. It is very exciting, and it is definitely worthwhile watching. If you've seen this, let me know in the comments. All right, let's go back inside so they don't notice we're gone. Oh, hey guys. Yeah, we were just outside checking the air. The temperature. We were checking the temperature to see how cold it was. I don't know if anybody's going to care about this. I don't know if this will actually make it into the video, but I thought I would show the process of how I figured this stuff out, just in case anybody cares. So I take the calipers and I measure out the outside diameter of the pipe, and I scribe a line. $10, $20, $30, $40, right there. For my 35 remaining degrees, I split that into 17.5. I'm working with extremely limited space, and the closer these edges are together, the less space these joints are taking up. So we cut that off here. This is the 40-degree angle. These are 17.5. I flip that over like that. Now I can tape these together. All right, now we're going to take this over to the engine and fit it on and see how it fits. There we have it. There is our 40-degree angle with our 17.5 angles matched together. And that gives us just enough room, hopefully just enough room, and it gives us the angle so that we're going right down into the water box. I'm going to call it a water box. I don't know if that's the best camera angle for you guys, but I've got my hands kind of full here, so let's see. I've got an alignment mark there, so that goes like that. That sits against there. If I had a little steeper angle on the second bit, that would give me a perfect fitment. So what I think I'm going to do is try to measure this angle and see what the difference is there. Good news, folks, I was able to find the perfect number, or very close to perfect number. I've got a 40-degree angle coming directly off of the flange, and then I've got a combined 40-degree angle. So 40 directly off of the head, and then 20 and 20. And that seems to work pretty much perfect. This water jacket plate is directly up against the block, and there's just a hair on the top here, probably a ½ degree clearance on the top. So that means when I actually weld it together and pull it in at the top, it'll be just a hair of clearance. Now I'm going to have to figure out the best way to go about cutting these out with doing the fewest amount of switches. I'm hoping to mount the water box up as high as possible, something like this, because the least amount of pipe that we have exposed without water cooling, the better. It'll be less heat under the hull and less chance of damage to the manifold itself because it will be cooled better. Anyway, I have a lot of cutting to do. It is now time for the big reveal where I show you guys all of the pieces that I've been working on throughout this video. Stick around to the end because I do have to admit that there was a change that I made along the way that ended up being a whole lot more work for me. I did it because I wanted the exhaust to perform a little better, and because Rick M's kind of poked at me and said that this was going to weigh as much as a cast system. I think he's not too far off, but I tried to shave a little bit of weight off and make the exhaust perform a little bit better. So stick around to the end and I will tell you guys exactly what I did. This stuff is pretty much ready to weld together. I do need to make some pieces for the outlet, but I'm not actually going to do that until I figure out the process that I'm going to weld it together, or the steps that I'm going to take to weld everything together. So without any further ado, let's just take a look at all of these pieces and the mess that I have made. All right, here we have about 4 days of labor chopping all of these pieces up. I ended up cleaning pretty much everything up in the mill, so all of these edges are milled down. I just finished making up these pieces, and I don't know that they're perfect, but they're pretty good. They're gonna have to do. I am a little bit worried that these are going to make contact with the hull, but the exhaust actually has to make its way out of the flange into the water box, and yeah, there's no other way to do it than to have a decent sized pipe. This stuff is going to experience quite a bit of heat, so you can't use really thin stuff. And I'm basically going as thin as I would dare to go on that. The water is not actually going to flow through the primary runners, and so they are going to get extremely hot. I'm hoping that by tying them directly in and adding some webbing to them, we're going to be able to dissipate a lot of that heat both into the flange and into the water box itself. So, fingers crossed that that works. I still need to make the inlets and outlets for the water. I still need to make the outlet for the exhaust itself. I still need to figure out exactly what I'm going to do as far as attaching the inlets into the exhaust chamber, because this is just where they pierce through the water jacket itself. When I started into this project, I had a goal in mind of this taking about a week and a half or 2 weeks and making about 3 videos out of it. I'm on track for that. I'm hoping to get this stuff done fairly quickly so that I can get it back to the Jet Ski Brothers and they can continue on with their project. I'm sure that Josh will be extremely excited to see this parcel show up at his house. For those of you who don't follow my channel, you won't know that I just recently purchased a TIG and that my first aluminum welds was late December or early January. So I'm fairly new to aluminum fabrication and aluminum welding, and I will be taking extreme care to make sure that I don't get any warping or deformation on these pieces. I have learned my lesson from the last project that I worked on. Anyway, that stuff is all going to have to wait for the next video. That is going to do it for this one. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you next time. The center of this piece of material isn't exactly where the center of the ports are, so I've got to do a little bit of measuring and figure that out. This footage will probably never see the light of day, but after getting all of these pieces out, I decided that I wanted to make the intake manifold 3/4 of an inch shorter to make the volume on the exhaust log more even between the ports. If you look at the ports on the intake manifold, you can see they're closer to one side of the head than the other. And I didn't calculate for that the first time around. So I am now cutting 3/4 of an inch off of all of these pieces. I thought I would explain this to you guys in a little bit more detail. If you take a look at the right side of the head, you can see this port is very close to the edge of the head, where on this side it's actually about 3.5 or 4 inches from the edge of the head. When I originally designed the template and designed the log for the exhaust, I was going to make it fit very snug in between the mounting plates and just allow it to be offset to one side. I then decided I didn't like the way that would make the exhaust flow, and so if you take a look at the plates now, you can see that there is an even distance on this side and this side. So this plate no longer fits snug in between those mounts. It actually sits offset to one side.